Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to our Chain Abstraction Educate series. Let me know how many of you are here. Let me know. Let me say hi, GM. Be sure to share where you're all coming from. Really excited to see you all here. People still joining. We are in for an amazing amount of talks for the duration of this program. I'm going to quickly, hey, I can see people getting active in chat. Hello, Christoph. Hello, Savresh. Hello. Josh is here as well. I'm going to quickly send him an invite. He's going to be our very first speaker for this Educate series. Let me just quickly send over the invite. While we're waiting for Josh, as you can see on your screens, we have a multitude of speakers that are going to be coming in over the next few weeks and coming in and sharing on a lot of multiple different topics. Starting off with Josh. Hey, Josh. We'll just quickly go through everything that you can expect. I'm going to even highlight this. We're kicking things off with Josh from Celestia on how to build whatever, which is a modular blockchains with Celestia underneath. We will continue on with Ankit from Frontier Research on the Cake framework. These are all workshops that you will be able to listen to this week. This one's going to be on Wednesday. Continuing on for next week, we have Prabal from Avail on Nexus, the true unification. We will continue on with Brian Song from Polygon on what is Aglair and how is seamless cross-chain UX achieved. We will continue on with Ethan from Particle Network, which is about on-account level chain abstraction on one account, one balance, and any chain. Continuing off with Kendall from Proximity Labs on apps that will work on all chains. And then we also have Vibhav from Socket on Socket, which is the first chain abstraction protocol. Finalizing things with Giovanni from Socket with writing asynchronous cross-chain smart contracts using Agoric. And now moving on back to the very first one, which is going to be from Josh. Josh, how are you doing? Welcome on stage.
Doing well. How are you? Thank you for having me. And thank you to the entire Encode Club team for having me.
Likewise, very happy to have you. For those that are just joining, we are ready to kick off the Chain Abstraction Educate series with our very first workshop, which is going to be from Josh. Josh, feel free to share a few words, share your screen, and take it away.
I guess first, how are you doing? I hope you're doing well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started.
While Josh is setting up, everyone, please make sure to post your questions on the bottom right side. You will see the chat section as well as the questions one. Josh has a very interesting presentation prepared, which is also going to be followed by a short demo afterwards, depending on whether there's time or not. But if you have any questions, make sure to post them on the bottom right side, and we'll come back to them towards the very end, where we're going to be having the Q&A element of the workshop. But yeah, Josh, over to you.
Cool. Thank you everyone for coming again, and Yasin and the rest of the Encode Club team, thank you for having me. I'm going to be going over today a presentation that's called How to Build Whatever, Modular Blockchains with Celestia underneath. And this is actually V2 of the presentation, but why? Oh no, hold on a second. Technical difficulties. I didn't know if you minimize these, it skips them. And if you're really good, you can see the whole presentation right now. All right, going back. Okay, so this is V2 of the presentation, but why is it V2? I did like literally the same presentation twice in a row. And I was looking through pictures from Modular Summit and I saw Viet judging me. So I decided to just like scrap it completely pretty much and start over. So if you've seen this before, it's going to be hopefully a little bit different today. And first, I guess a little bit about me. My name is Josh. I'm a solutions engineer at Celestia Labs. I work on documentation, demos, things like this, workshops and tutorials. And I guess a little bit about why I got into blockchains. Back in 2021, I had finished university and I concentrated in supply chain management. I saw this Twitter post from someone about Drifter Shoots, about how basically he was able to use blockchains to fundraise to get himself out of a pickle that he was in with the justice system. And it was something that I thought was really interesting and fascinating because he was able to do that without some intermediary. like GoFundMe or something like that, because those would have probably not allowed him to fundraise for this. But he was able to sell his artwork and basically get out of that pickle. And this was just something that kind of opened my eyes to what blockchains could be. For the longest time, I was kind of like, I mean, honestly, anti-blockchain just because of what I knew from Bitcoin and how much energy it used. So yeah, this tweet, and then like, I guess a multitude of accounts that I had followed on Twitter trying to kind of get my feet wet into all this, helped me discover something called Developer DAO. From there, I found something called BuildSpace, where I went and took my interest for building websites and actually built a few applications on chain. But yeah, this is kind of why I'm here. I want to shout out Encode Club again, because they were the ones that helped me do my first workshop at a conference back at Avalanche Summit a few years ago. And I was a DevRel at Anchor before this and BuildSpace before that. But enough about me. Let's get to the fun stuff, which is Celestia and modular blockchains. So in this presentation, we'll be going over what Celestia is, what a modular blockchain is, why it matters, and then we'll go over like how you can actually build whatever, because I understand it's a very vague directive. At the end, please drop your questions in the chat if you have any. We'll get to those at the end. So first, what is Celestia? You might have heard of it before. You might not really have gotten too deep into it. But at a broad level, Celestia is a modular data availability network that makes it easy for anyone to securely launch their own blockchain. And this means Celestia allows you to make your own blockchain. And Celestia also allows you to plug and play whatever. Now, what is data availability? We talk a lot about data availability. You probably hear about different DA layers, alt DA layers, things like that. But I think it's first important to clarify that data availability is not data storage. Data storage is when you're concerning yourself with like the old history of the chain that was many weeks or days or hours even ago. And data availability in a blockchain is the ability to ensure that transaction data in each block, included in each block, produced. So for every block made, you need to make sure that that information, that data, is accessible to every single node in the network, which allows everyone to independently verify the validity of those transactions. And this is important to prevent yourself from being on the bad side of a data withholding attack, where in a case where a full node withholds data and does something malicious. And I guess expanding on this a little bit, while light nodes on Celestia allow you to verify this independently, the full nodes will always grow, the state of the chain will always grow, but the resource requirements for the everyday user do not grow. And we're going to get into more of that throughout the presentation. So I talked about data availability. That's part of something that's very crucial to what Celestia does. It's pretty much like that's really what Celestia is and all it does. But there's something called data availability sampling that makes Celestia possible. And what data availability sampling is, you might have seen people running nodes on their phones, and it reminds me, I guess I can get one started here for later. But you might have seen people running nodes on their phones where you can go and hit like start light node and it starts it up. And what this is actually doing, it's not downloading all the blocks. It's just downloading a tiny little sample of the block header and the block. Or it's downloading the header and a sample of the block and verifying that using some very fancy math, all of the data is probably there based on these samples that we pulled. Now, going into that a little bit deeper, data availability sampling is also known as DAS. DAS is possible by allowing light clients. DAS allows light clients to have a very high probability guarantee that the entire block is valid by just downloading a small percentage of the block. And this uses something called erasure coding. If you're really interested, I think I have in a few slides some papers that you can read if you want to learn more about the maths behind it. But really what DASing does is it increases the scalability of a network by reducing the cost for users to operate nodes and to verify the network. So the more nodes that there are, the more capacity the network has. So the more of us that are running these nodes, the more of us that are sampling for our own sovereignty, the more block space we can have, the more rollups we can have, the more applications there can be on top of Celestia. So most importantly, I guess if you have a guess, drop it in the chat. Light nodes make the internet verifiable by all. Now, right now, this internet is about 2 megabytes per 12 seconds. But the more nodes that are on that network, the more people can verify those that data, and the more data there can be. So at the end of the day, this is a way to scale the things that we use on the internet with end user verifiability. So that sounds like really cool and fancy, but one of my teammates made a really good point at the Modular Summit 3.0 that we need to make it boring. And there's, I guess, like 2 ways you can look at it. And this talk is called Light Nodes Everywhere, Why and How by Connor O'Hara. I really recommend watching it. So if you want to like pull something up for the queue after this, I'd recommend scanning that QR code and checking it out. But basically, Connor's, like, my summary of watching that talk is that we need to make running light nodes boring so that people don't really think about it. They trust it as something like the padlock symbol in your browser. And on that note, you can actually run nodes in your browser now. So I guess like a year ago, I would have been probably presenting on like how to install Celestia Node, how to run Celestia Node. And there's definitely still some progress to be made here, but you can run nodes in your browser. We're actually going to do that at the end of the talk, and I invite you to do that as well with me. So we're getting there. It's getting more boring. It's getting easier to do. And at the end of the day, we don't really want people to have to think about this to run a light node. So we've covered Celestia, covered data availability sampling, and we're just talking about light nodes more. So what is a modular blockchain? I mentioned that you can build your own modular blockchain with Celestia, but what is that? So a modular blockchain is a blockchain that outsources at least one of its components to another chain. So in practice, what this looks like is you take a normal blockchain that has everything tightly coupled together, where, I mean, if you get a lot of users on any one of those levels, it's going to cause bottlenecks. And I guess your users are going to be in the execution layer. But what you can do is, instead of having all these things tightly coupled together, where there are bottlenecks, is you're able to split this apart into separate functions. So in this picture, we're going to just use an example where consensus and data availability are done through Celestia, and then we settle on Ethereum, and execution is on some L2. And I guess in this case, a lot of L2s, I guess if we like want to really think about it and take it literally, I guess we can think of Ethereum as being a modular blockchain, where in the case of Ethereum, I would say most of the execution is outsourced to L2s, and now even we're seeing L3s getting a lot of use, especially with like very low gas fees. So that might be a stretch, making that claim, but with Celestia underneath, you can build whatever, and even a blockchain with multiple off-chain components. And I think this is important because there can be things on your application layer that don't really always touch the blockchain. Like, you don't need to write every post to an EVM L2 in order to have a like sufficiently decentralized application. And I'm definitely using some of the like Farcaster marketing language there, but that is one example where on Lens, you have to post everything. Like, every post that you make is a transaction on Polygon. You go to do your taxes, you're going to have to probably deal with that. But if you have some things on chain, like maybe your account, your keys, the key store, then you don't really need to rely on posting every single thing. It's just something that secures the account. Might have gotten some things a little bit off there, but that's kind of my understanding. So what are the benefits of building whatever? My timer's going under. So yeah, benefits for, I guess like the biggest thing here is benefits for users. Um, Building with Celestia underneath makes your application or your chain, whatever it is, cheaper for users. It makes it verifiable by all with light nodes. It makes them scalable, customizable, and secured by the base layer. I'd say most importantly, sorry, one second. It allows builders to specialize, iterate quickly, and scale. On the right here, I have a graphic, and this is for Syndicate's frame chain. And this is built as an L3 with OP stack on top of base using Celestia underneath for DA. And what this graphic is highlighting is that it's using only basically the gas that was used on Ethereum. So all the transactions that were made, the gas on Ethereum would have reached about $321,000, but the gas that was used on frame chain was actually only less. Was actually less than 0.2 of a cent. So the most important thing about building whatever are that you can unlock sovereignty. And why does this matter for users? Celestia makes being on-chain better for users. And they might not even know it. So the first example that I have here is something called Prism, formerly known as Dymos. This was introduced at the Modular Summit by Ryan Ford. So 2 tweets here that I guess first thing, I'd really recommend watching this talk. This is about end-to-end encryption and solving it using Celestia. The first shout out to this was by Zaki, and it says Celestia is about something bigger than just scaling blockchains. Another one is from Evan Forbes, who's one of the core devs for Core and App. And this says that this is very low key yet remarkably practicable, where you can verify proofs on your phone to authenticate who you're communicating with. So this talk is about the fact that current end-to-end encryption services are not trust minimized. Ryan describes, and I'd really recommend watching the talk, there's basically this vulnerability in a lot of the apps that we think are actually encrypted, where there can be a machine in the middle attack, basically where your keys get swapped. And the use case of this application is that you can create a key store directory that is basically built on Celestia, where anyone can go and verify. Basically, instead of having to trust Signal for the privacy numbers, you can actually go and verify that on chain. So I might have botched a little bit of that there, but I'd really recommend going back and watching Ryan's talk if you want to scan the QR code. And yeah, we're at Dymos is actually live on Selenium right now. So if you want to go check that out, I would also recommend following them on socials. So example 2 is arcade.fun. I need to pause for a second. Okay. Second is arcade.fun. This is a way where you can play Atari classics on chain. This is like the first thing where I thought I want to actually like send this to my friends. The funny thing is I did, it's still too complicated, so I think we have a ways to go. But this is built on Stack, which is an L3, and you can play Asteroids on chain. Really fun, right in your browser, I guess even on your phone. But this is something that scales with the number of users. You don't even I think you buy the game, but there's no gas after that. So example 3 is whatever you want. And I guess it's more like 3 to n because there's endless options. So you might be wondering, how do I build whatever? Step 1, you need to run a light node. This is something that you can now basically run on the Internet of Things. I think it's a little bit of a stretch still, but at the end of the day, this can make the Internet of Things verifiable by all. And most importantly, anyone can run a light node. So there's a few ways to run a light node. You can do it in your web browser on the right. You can do it on your phone, which I guess now it's a good time to pull that back up. Looks like it shut down, but you can run it on your phone. It's probably better to do it on an Android, and you can also do it in your computer terminal. In the middle here, we also have something called Celestia, which allows you to run this on your Mac. So step 2 is build whatever with Celestia underneath. So this can be a sovereign rollup, which wouldn't use any kind of settlement layer. This can be a based rollup, which would use the base layer like Celestia to sequence the transactions. We're going to have EVM rollups, SVM rollups. You can build with other VMs, but at the end of the day, you can build whatever you want. On the right here, there's a graphic with some different like configurations for how you could build these. And this is an example of what it would look like to build something that uses Ethereum for settlement and consensus, Celestia for DA, has its own execution environment, and in the middle we have something that's more like a sovereign rollup or a base rollup. And on the right, it could be whatever you want. So how a rollup works is it basically bundles transactions into a single proof and posts them to whatever the DA layer is. And you can build these rollups with Astria, Rollkit, Sovereign SDK, other frameworks that are in the works. And you also might be wondering who's doing this. So rollups on Celestia mainnet beta, I think the UI is now outdated, but there are about 18 rollups live on Celestia mainnet beta. And then on Mocha testnet, right now we have 7 or 8. So if you'd like to get involved, I'd say a good way to do this is on the forum discussions, forum discussion. The forum is at forum.celestia.org. Celestia improvement proposals are available at cips.celestia.org. I'd also recommend, if you're looking to actually get involved on the development side, checking out GitHub issues. And if you're just looking to hack around, stay tuned for the next Infinite Space Bazaar. So I got through the slides actually a lot quicker than I expected. So I hope we have some time for questions after this. But the first thing we're going to do is actually skip over to, I'm going to share a different screen. If I can figure it out. Cool. And we're going to go through running a light node in the browser. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go to questions now. Yeah, I don't, doesn't look like there's any questions.
Adding quickly, jumping quickly on stage. I don't think there have been any questions on the questions one, apart from a wallet one. There was a general one which I responded to, and there have been mostly general inquiries regarding the workshops altogether. So if everyone is not reading the chat, just a minor thing to add. All of these workshops are recorded, and we will be making them available to all of you within 24 hours, and you will be able to watch them publicly. So.
I did see something in the chat about sharing the maths with me, and it looks like I got rid of that slide. But the 2 papers that you'd want to read are the Lazy Ledger paper and Fraud Proofs and Data Availability paper. And if you Google either one of those, you'll get there. The first one is by Mustafa Al-Bassam, and the second one is by Vitalik, Mustafa, and Alberto Sanino, as well as Ismail Coffey. Yeah, so I went through this a lot quicker than I expected. I'm going to go ahead and switch to running a light node. So I guess if you're following along, I'm going to drop in the chat something called Lumina. And Lumina is basically a version of Celestia Node that's built with WASM that allows you to run that light node in a browser. And if we head over to Lumina, we can see that I'm in Arc, so any Chromium browser should work. I think Firefox is also good. It allows us to directly verify Celestia. So we can start our light node by selecting the network. In this case, I'll run it on mainnet. And once this is initialized, we're going to begin fetching past headers. This is going to take some time, hopefully not more than that. Oh man. I guess this is why you like just don't do live demos. So I'm gonna go ahead and restart that and try again. I don't know if there's something on my demo browser tab that's preventing it. Okay, cool. So we have actually fetched some past headers. I think that was just a little bug. And what this is going to do is basically catch up during the 30-day sampling window. If you want to see the logs, I guess if you've seen the memes on like Twitter and stuff of people posting their light nodes, this is pretty similar to what you'd see if you're running the log in your own terminal or running the node in your own terminal. And we're fetching the headers of past blocks. We're sampling new ones that come in. So this is a new one that came in. This is a new one that came in. And you can see the square layout illustrated over here as well. So the bigger the square, the more squares there will be. So it looks like we just got one of 64 by 64. And that's about it for running the light node in browser. It shouldn't take too long to sync, but it's something that you can just leave in the background if you want. I'm going to actually go ahead and hit restart and close this out. The next thing we're going to do is switch gears a little bit and run we're going to run a normal light node, meaning one in our terminal. This is going to be on Mocha, and what we're doing is getting prepared to run an OP stack rollup with Celestia underneath. Now, this is going to be an OP stack devnet, so the devnet, meaning the ETH-L1 and the L2 will be running locally on my computer. There will be running a light node as well and posting to Mocha for DA. So the first thing I want to do here is check that my sampling stats are looking good, meaning the head of the sampled chain, the head of the catch-up, and the network head height are all at the same point. Once that's done, I'm going to actually go ahead and stop the node. So when we're running, actually pull this over. When we're running an OP stack rollup, we're going to be using something called Rollup. And we can just go to that real quick here. And Rollup is the simplest way to spin up your own dev or production rollup and is fully configurable. So this is running on a Celestia org fork. The original repo is by oxfable.org and their contributors. So this is a big improvement, honestly, from the way that this used to work. Like a year ago, I would say running OP Stack was not really that fun or that easy, especially hooking up the Celestia side of it. So just skimming through this, the biggest prereq I would say here is Python. I guess if you're on a Mac, you already have that, but you would need to install it with Homebrew anyways. And what this looks like is a CLI instead of like a Docker Compose, only it used to be pretty messy. But what we're going to do here is skip back to this little quick notepad I have. And I already have Rollup and cloned here and built. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready to start that up. So the first thing I'll do is enter a virtual environment in Python. And I will run a Rollup setup. I think I did this earlier, so it should be pretty quick. If not, I guess I can just peep the chat to see if there's any questions. Nice. I don't know. Okay, I've already built this, so I'm not going to rebuild it. The next thing I can do is run rollup, clean devnet. It's going to ask me some questions about how I want to set that up. And we'll allow it to overwrite the DA server. We're starting up our mock L1. I feel like if you're an EVM dev, this is going to look more or less familiar to you. But the one thing that's happening that's really different is we're going to be running a Celestia Light node here shortly. And if that node has started, we should be able to check the sampling stats, which it worked. So the light node is running. And we're also fully sampled. So that means we can start posting and retrieving data right away. Okay, and now our L2 RPC server is coming up. And now that this is going, we have all L2 components running. So we're not going to really do too much to play around with the actual rollup itself. We are going to see that it's posting to Celestia though. So if we run Celestia state account address, we will see the account for that rollup. We'll head back over to Mocha, over to Selenium. And the UI was literally just updated today, so it's kind of throwing me off. We're going to switch to Mocha and go check that account out. And we can see that about 43 seconds, 30 seconds, and 15 seconds ago-ish, we have blobs that were posted. And those are blobs for this rollup that's running locally. Now, I'm not going to show the whole config. So I do have a private key in there, but if you saw it and you want to get that Sepolia ETH, go for it. But basically, what we can, something I forgot to do is check the logs of that deployment. So we can see the blobs that are being successfully submitted. We can also see them being requested from the DA layer. So every time that happens, we're going to post it. We're going to also get it to make sure that the blob was actually included in the block that we thought it was included in. Now, if you want to run this with an L2 or L1, on an L2 or on an L1, what you can do is use the config from the example file and change it up to fit the chain that you're deploying to. In this case, this example here is for Ethereum Sepolia. And I guess since we're here, I'm going to go ahead and do it. We're going to at least get this started. So we've gotten the devnet running. This is running a mock L1 with an L2 that is our rollup, and then posting to Celestia Mocha. The next thing we're going to do is actually run through deploying a testnet with a very similar fashion. So I'm going to go ahead and open the example config.toml. Bring that over here. So if you look at the example and ignore my VS Code error, you can see that the L2 chain ID that we're creating is this pretty random string. The L1 chain ID is a mock L1 that's local using Anvil. We have some commented out Gurley chain ID and URLs here. And then we're going to need to provide keys. And these keys that are used in the example are the Anvil, test junk mnemonics. So they're funded. They have basically a bunch of gas in them. So if you are doing this on your own, that is the cue to remember to use at least 10 ETH on Sepolia. I guess if you're deploying this to another chain, like Base or something, it might not cost as much. But what we can do is open the non-example config.toml, and we're going to paste this in here. Noting again, this key actually does have funds in it, so congrats if you find it, but please don't take it all. Leave some for everyone else. And the next thing we can do is head back over to our terminal. I'm going to clean this up a little bit, except we need to be in a virtual environment. And we're going to run this L2. So something that's important to note here is that one of the settings we have on this is set to avoid issues with the public RPC. Is deploy slowly set as true. And that's because Sepolia often has problems if you're using, especially a free RPC, basically problems with speed. So if I were to run this without that set, there's a pretty good chance that it's going to just kind of error out on its own because it tries to submit some transaction too soon before the other one's included. What happens then is you basically waste gas trying to redeploy. So the logs are looking good over here in terms of them just they're doing something. What we can do to see if there's actually something going on the Ethereum side is we can go over to Etherscan. We can check out that account, and there's nothing deployed yet. But in a second here, we should start to see the contracts for the L2 being deployed. As I mentioned, this is going to take some time. It's also running in slow mode, so it's going to take longer than this call will be to fully deploy the rollup. But if you want, I guess a workaround for this would be to use a paid provider. On that note, I'd still just recommend using slow mode so that it doesn't run into errors. So yeah, Jennifer, I'm reading the chat. The update on Selenium, nothing broke. The UI was just different, so it kind of threw me off for a second there. But yeah, I don't really have much else to go over here. I guess I'm gonna check the chat. Same question. Oh, could I explain what a rollup is? I see that it was explained in the chat, but I guess because we have time here.
We do have time. So.
Yeah, a rollup is just something that batches up transactions or events or whatever you want. Doesn't necessarily have to be like a monetary transaction. It could be like a lamp in your house or something. But it bundles up all these things and then it posts it to some DA layer. So I try to explain it like abstract like that because you can build whatever you want. Like kind of going back to the chat app, that's an example that I don't really think of as something that you would need a blockchain for. But you do need the blockchain to verify people's keys. So I think it's a really cool use case that is also still considered a rollup. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this Etherscan page real quick. Yeah, so now we're cooking. We have some transactions on Sepolia that are being deployed. We can see that its estimated amount of ETH is a lot. So as I mentioned, you probably need about 10, otherwise it's just going to get stuck. And this is going to deploy a lot of contracts and make a lot of transactions, so it's going to keep running. So I think we're going to call that there. But yeah, I guess I want to ask again if there's any questions.
Yeah, perfect time to follow up with some last questions while we still have Josh around. And again, reminder for those of you that are watching that all of these workshops are recorded, so you're fine to rewatch at any later point, and we will make sure to post these recordings in the next 24 hours.
I was going to just do one last little share here. I wanted to thank everyone for coming. Yasin, thank you again for hosting. And I'll do another last call for questions. If anyone wants to chat, I'd be happy to answer more questions. And then shameless shill of myself, if you want to follow me on GitHub, Farcaster, X, Twitter, whatever, please feel free to, or to reach out if you have questions. My DMs are open. And lastly, don't forget to build whatever. So yeah, I want to thank everyone for coming again, and just open the floor again for some last questions. If not, please reach out.
Great. For those that are still here and waiting, let me just quickly also showcase what our next workshop in the series is going to be, which is going to come on this Wednesday. For some reason, sharing is not really working on my end. It should be working now. For those that like the workshop today, please make sure to tune in 2 days' time, this Wednesday, when we're going to have Ankit from Frontier Research to come in and explain more on the Cake framework. So hopefully another interesting topic for you to enjoy. I hope you all had fun with Josh. A really great workshop with a lot of interesting examples, a lot of great examples that hopefully will come in handy for you. And as I mentioned in the chat section, for those of you that did not know, we've received questions on what other programs we have planned. There is going to be a hackathon, which is going to follow up after this Educate series. So do make sure to absorb as much as possible from all the amazing talks that we have lined up, and then put your skills to the test. So yeah, I'm not seeing any further questions in chat. Again, thank you, Josh, for being here. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And thank you all for coming in. I hope you enjoyed the workshop, and see you all in a couple of days. Have a great day. See you all.